We're back with more Seattle Real Estate Radio with your hosts, Christian Nossum and Dan Keller.
Hello, and welcome to Seattle Real Estate Radio here on KKOL 1300 AM Business Radio. We are joined today with I can't talk apparently. With Mark LETH. He is the Assistant Region Administrator of Traffic Operations at Washington State Department of Transportation, otherwise known as WashDOT, which is much easier for me to say because apparently I can't talk right now. So, Mark, thank you very much for coming on the air and spending your time with us today.
Sure. Good afternoon.
Yeah, and he is actually coming to us on the phone. A lot of times every other guest comes in, but he's such a bigwig, he doesn't have the time to drive up to Seattle to So
I'm sure that's what it is.
Yes, exactly. That's what we're going to pretend it is. That's what we're going to tell everybody that it is. You're a bigwig. That's the deal. So So just so that people are clear what WashDOT is, they are the organization that designs, operates, and maintains the regional freeway system and large portions of the arterial highways that are outside of the larger city boundaries. And Mark has been with WashDOT for just a little while, 30 years, and most of those years we're working in traffic engineering and operations. So again, thank you very much for coming on today, Mark. We appreciate it, and hopefully a lot of people will learn some stuff today. So first, Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what WashDOT does for those of our listeners who aren't too familiar with it?
Okay, you touched on that a little bit, but we're essentially the stewards of the freeway and highway system in the state of Washington. That includes the ferry system. We have involvement with the aviation system in the state and actually manage several smaller airports. But people best know us from the freeway system statewide, and much of the highway system we're directly responsible for. Other portions of the highway system in the larger cities, the larger cities take the lead, but we still have oversight responsibilities. So we anywhere from planning through operations and maintenance and preservation of the system. That's what we're all about, and safety is by far our number one priority over everything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you guys do a great job with your social media presence, especially your Twitter feeds. And I mean, a couple weeks ago when it was Pride weekend, we had a Mariners game, or Mariner games, I should say. We had the president in town. We had Sounders game. We had the Pride parade in addition to all the other activities going on with that. And you guys had whoever was the genius that came up with the I don't even know, it looked like Microsoft Paint drawing on top of a map of Seattle showing all the things going on. That was just hilarious. And I saw numerous people commenting on that are friends of mine on Facebook and Twitter, and just saying how well the artwork was done on that. So do we get to give you credit on that, or was that someone else that drew that fine artistic work?
I am definitely not even that good of an artist, but part of our communication staff that work really hard to mix it up, to keep people's interest, because weekends, like you just mentioned, particularly during the summer months around here, it just seems like a blur. It never lets up. Yep. There's plenty of special events. There's sports events. There's everybody traveling through the area, and everybody else in the country wants to come to Seattle to check it out during our best weather months. And so I thought that was a great idea. Get the point across. It captured people's attention, and that's really what we're trying to do with the social media side.
Yeah, you guys got a ton of engagement on that post, and it was all good, positive stuff too. And I also got to say, and I kind of talked about this in the first segment before we brought you on, you guys do a great job of prepping people in advance of major closures or big events happening, and it really does seem to help. For some reason, it must just be that people in Seattle hate traffic so much that if they have any excuse to be able to work from home, they're going to take it. Because anytime you guys say, hey, next week's going to suck because of we're closing down, or we're repairing this, or we're doing whatever, the president's coming in, or whatever the reason, people actually listen, and the only reason that they listen is because you guys are there to tell us about it. So good job on that. I appreciate that because it makes my job easier, because for some reason people still want to go look at homes even though the president's in town. So I'm still driving around.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate people listening. Again, the challenge is to get people's attention, and we realize that there's just constant activity around here, and really is the key to get the information out early and often. And we need our media partners in particular to pound away on it too. Can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm. And I think they do a good job of helping out with that. And it's you guys do a better job. I know I talk to people that are real estate agents across the country, and that also have cities that have bad traffic, and they don't talk about how fun their Department of Transportation is with social media or anything like that. So I'm sure you guys are near the top on that. So a lot of people complain about traffic in Seattle, and rightfully so. Traffic sucks, and there's no getting around that. But you guys are here to relieve and minimize congestion. And what are some of the ways that you guys try to do that?
Well, we've already touched on one of the big ones, which is the communication part. Whether it's just ongoing, day-to-day, recurrent traffic, as well as all the events and construction activities and everything else, incidents that affect traffic. So that's a big part of what we do. Beyond that is trying to maintain the roadway when our maintenance forces can actually get out there, which unfortunately we're forced to more and more night work because there's so much traffic during the day, and that poses challenges. But to try to keep things as operable as possible, we have a pretty aging system out there, as far as not just the pavement, but all the devices out there. And if you rust on numerous devices, and just trying to keep that going. But beyond that, operations side, messaging in the field with variable message signs and changeable message signs. We use a pretty extensive ramp metering system in this region that's well known nationally and internationally for how effective it is. Try to make low-cost, practical solutions where we can get them in. But the larger part of our program is legislative directive projects that take a little bit longer to build, and some add capacity, some are more safety projects. There's a mix of those. But coordinating with other agencies, because we're not the only operator, we're not the transit agencies, so working with them to try to make, particularly where we can affect it more, the rubber-tired transit, the buses, work as effectively as possible. And really the key is we can't make the congestion go away. I don't think that's going to happen. But reliability, whether it's for transit systems or for the public, that as much as possible they can count on a reasonably reliable trip so they can plan ahead. That's our focus in what we do.
Yeah. So we were talking about light rail right before you came on, and I'm kind of curious to know if you have any sort of insight, or I don't know if you actually have stats on it or if it's just a feel, but have you guys seen changes to congestion since the light rail opened, and especially since the Capitol Hill and the UW station opened, which are obviously we're going a little more north at this point. Has there been any sort of noticeable change at all?
It's difficult with some of these types of changes in the system, particularly over a longer period of time, where congestion levels change, particularly with the economy going up and down, which is a big factor. The light rail, and I'll add to it the Sounder
That's a good
service
point.
to the south that was implemented a few years ago. I think from what I recall, I don't have the stats in front of me, that we saw some amount of changes in behavior. Did it make congestion go away? Certainly not.
No, but it minimized it probably.
It helped. As far as the more recent implementation of Capitol Hill and UW's service, it's too early to tell and to compare to previous traffic conditions to really know what's going on. Just anecdotally, which everybody's heard and I've experienced riding it a few times, it's a very busy route. There's a lot of people using it. So I think that type of information and back to reliability very important to a lot of people, even if it's not necessarily the fastest trip, but they can rely on getting in on point A and going to point B, that it's going to be the same time from day to day.
Exactly, and I think it's 7.5 or 8 minutes from UW to downtown or something like that.
Pretty darn quick.
Yeah,
and comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you could make that drive on a normal day in that amount of time. So
yeah, and that's a very challenging portion of the freeway system, the most challenging portion we have between I-90 and 520, and so any number of trips, and not just in the peak periods, but on the edges of the peaks and weekends, any amount that we can get off of the freeway and out of vehicles during those times. If people can do that, and not everybody can, all the better.
Yeah. So 520, you brought that up, and I know that's obviously that's a major roadway, and just recently I think it was right over the beginning of April is when the new 520 bridge opened. Is that right? It was right over April, or
essentially the same time as the UW light rail, so all that happened.
Yeah. So, and I know they haven't finished it completely because most of the bridge is there, but I don't even know what you call the other part that goes through kind of the Montlake neighborhood. Do we have any sort of idea? Are you able to kind of give people a heads up on when that's supposed to be completed?
So what's under construction right now continues until summer 2017, and
so another year.
That kind of extends the bridge work closer to east of Montlake, and then the next phases kick in. I believe, and this is, there's plenty of information like this on our website, and I'm not part of the day-to-day project team, but you can find all this information on there. There's all kinds of interesting information, but I think 2018 is when construction starts for the next phase, which includes the Montlake vicinity, essentially.
Got it.
And connecting that the bridge to the east on the southern portion of it to Montlake, and then it continues on, and the program ultimately doesn't get completed until the mid-2020s when it's connected to I-5. There's still some very challenging work like the Portage Bay Bridge, which is way up in the air, and more to come, but it's all funded, and they'll keep marching along. But having the new bridge in place is a nice step and a nice milestone.
And I got to say, that bridge is so smooth.
Yeah.
It's so quiet and smooth. So, Mark, we're going to keep you on the line. We got to take a quick commercial break, but we're going to come back in just about 30 seconds, a minute, after a couple words from our sponsor. So stay tuned for more Seattle Real Estate Radio after the break.
We're back with more Seattle Real Estate Radio with your hosts, Christian Nossum and Dan Keller.
Hello, and welcome back to Seattle Real Estate Radio here on KKOL 1300 AM. We are back with Mark LETH. I don't know why I can't say with today.
You're looking at his last name.
Yeah, that must be what it is.
I was doing the same.
So Mark LETH is our traffic. We're going to bring you in every week now, Mark, just letting you know. You're a new host of Seattle Real Estate Radio. You didn't know this until today, but no, I'm just joking. But you're going to be our traffic expert, at least for today, from WashDOT. And we're just going to continue our conversation about how Seattle traffic's going now and in the future. And then maybe while Mark's on the air, or maybe in the next segment, we're going to go over how that relates to home prices as well. We're going to bring it all full circle. So definitely stay tuned for this segment and then the next one as well, because it's going to be good. We're going to bring it all around. So Dan, got some questions here.
Mark, I'm in it every single day. So my wife and I, we live up north, and I commute to Kirkland, and then I commute across the bridge to Seattle. Yeah, and so certainly follow y'all on Twitter. And or half the time it's Christian giving me a text or a heads up.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm out there all day, every day.
Yeah,
showing clients' houses and whatnot. So, yeah.
Somebody should have told me yesterday, though, about the farmer's market down on Terry Ave, because that was a nightmare, and I had no idea.
Oh, well.
And evidently it's going to happen every week from,
it's that's more Seattle,
that's
not
downtown.
Washington.
That's it.
I'm a bit disconnected from that.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't help me there.
No.
Hey, so tell me a little about, or tell us a little about the know before you go and other ways travelers can estimate or avoid traffic.
Yeah, again, it's the same theme we've been beating on here today and what we do every day. It's communication, and the quicker we get that out and more in advance of significant events, the better for travelers. But there's plenty of different types of information on our website and elsewhere. Ours is pretty easy to access. It's just wsdot.com /traffic, and you can go in there and choose a freeway route from point A to point B, and it'll give you a time that you want to travel, and it'll give you a predictive travel time, not only for an average day, but it'll also give you what we call a reliable day, which it's not guaranteed, but more often than not, even when those more significant events happen, you'll make it there on time. So it's a longer period of time than an average, but all kinds of information on construction projects and impacts coming up, and the special events, and other cities have this. This information goes out to private entities, not just the media, but others that push this information out, and the more the merrier as far as we're concerned. Anybody that's putting this information out, as long as it's accurate, it's great.
Yeah, and a big part of that is your Twitter handle. So, for our listeners, if you go over to Twitter, it's WSDOT_traffic. So, yeah, that is a great...
And you guys have multiple Twitter handles depending on, there's the passes one, there's just the essential DOT, just straight up at WSDOT. There's Tacoma, there's Good to Go, there's all sorts of them. Do you have a ferry one as well, or is that something different altogether?
Yes, they have one too. So you can get to all those through our website. But major projects, they usually set up a Twitter feed and a Facebook feed, and again, any way we can get that information out is good stuff.
Well, maybe you can add some commentary to this. So rush hour, is it just me, or is rush hour kind of moving up these days?
What is rush hour?
What is rush hour? Yeah.
It's not just you.
Okay.
And every time the region gets busier, and we're certainly in that economic boom time, and coming out of the recession, it just makes it even more dramatic for everybody. But starting pretty much late 2013, 2014, it really started to increase in terms of congestion again, and it hasn't slowed down much. And so, yes, it's the congested period, that what we would consider the commute periods, have spread out more. People that can do it, they're leaving earlier or later in the day, depending on where they're traveling, and that's what happens because they don't want to be stuck in the middle of the peak. And so we're really, when we look at congested or commute hours these days in this region, it's really 5-hour commute hours, AM and PM. So it's 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. And there's certainly spot congestion along the freeways and local streets, other hours of the day, and certainly on weekends too.
Yeah, I was going to say 2:30. I used to be A-OK leaving Kirkland at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and now it's like, well, and this just may be, and I don't want to get off track here, but the toll lanes, I don't know if that's caused a little bit of congestion, but just in the last year, it's just been a little bit more congested earlier in the day, especially over there on 405.
Yeah, well, we were really seeing it in 2014, and I-5 really exploded, and I think you mentioned you're coming from the north end, so that I-5 commute from the north end down into Seattle, transit agencies, community transit's a big increase in travel time, even in the HOV lane over that year and beyond. And there's certainly a lot of people out there.
So what do you know about the viaduct, and how long will it be between when the viaduct is torn down and the new tunnel that Bertha is digging will be open?
Bertha. So again, this is one of our major projects. So there's a huge project team, mostly contractors and consultants working this, and I'm not involved day to day, but it's a design build project. So the contractor owns the project, including the schedule. So that I haven't seen anything more recent as far as what their intended schedule is, but they're obviously working on it. Bertha's about a third of the way through in terms of the distance that she needs to tunnel. And so that schedule, when they pin it down further, it's not just the the rate that the tunnel machine's working, but it's also the maintenance stops, which I believe they're on one right now.
Yeah, they got to replace and sharpen the blades and all that fun stuff. Yeah,
to make sure it gets there. And so after the tunneling's complete, there's still another year and a half or so of finishing up the roadway before it's open. So we're a ways out still. Okay. But I'm sorry I don't have anything more specific since it's really on the design build contractor.
Yeah, no, it's a conversation that comes up often.
Yeah, and I'm the reason that I wanted to ask that question, because if you weren't, I was going to, Dan. Is I could see how, again, I'm always bringing this back to real estate, so I could see how that could have an impact on home prices in West Seattle, because once that viaduct is torn down, getting into downtown from West Seattle is just going to get worse. And I could see that depending on if it's a long, prolonged delay or gap between when the viaduct's torn down and the tunnel's done and open, and it's just surface streets going through there, I could see potentially a decrease or maybe not an increase in home prices over in West Seattle, because it's not going to be as desirable because of traffic. So
yeah. Certainly, the intent is that the tunnel is now done and open before the viaduct comes down. So that's the goal, and that's what that's always been the plan. The local street work that happens after that comes after that work, so it's a little further along. But it is moving along, and we realize it is a vital link to downtown from West Seattle in particular.
Yeah.
So, Mark, in your opinion, in the next, let's just say 5 to 10 years, what's your opinion on what traffic will look like on I-5?
Well, I'll caveat it with the economy again. If it keeps booming, it keeps getting more congested in the near term. Five years out, we'll have Link Light Rail to Northgate. On I-5, not just in the Seattle area, it's pretty busy down in Pierce County and the Tacoma area. They're working on an HOV project right now that I think extends from M Street to Portland Avenue. That'll be done. So there are some.
Seems like that's been going on for like 15 years.
Yeah, well, it's many times it's how it's funded and phased. We don't have a lot of control over that, and they're all difficult to squeeze in and keep things moving.
Oh yeah.
Beyond that, I think as far as 5 years and beyond, it's more and more innovation of people figuring out how to work around this, whether it's the more simplistic just telecommuting, or it's on-demand carpool and van pool, and then I think I've heard the term Uber pools.
Uber pool, yep.
All these other things and ideas, and they'll continue. And so how can we're a tech-savvy region, right? And so how does that come into play even more to add to what we already have out there, the menu of information and some options at this point.
Yeah, well,
but there's nothing. Our core work on I-5 and not downtown in the next couple of years at least is just rehabilitating the pavement that's fallen apart. It's well beyond its useful life, and we patch it as we go, and so it's trying to make an attempt at catching up with that for what we funded.
Two things as we wrap up. You mentioned, we're a tech-savvy region. Speaking of tech, then, have you seen any impacts with the use of GPS apps like Waze or Google Maps?
I can't say I can pin it down for sure, but our traffic management center, they pay attention to all those things when incidents are going on. And I got to believe, and I think we've been fairly confident in some instances that are not in the core urban area, but a little further out, when an incident event occurs and how fast people react to it. They may not all be tapped into us. And again, however they're getting that information, great. I guess the downside for communities with Waze maybe is people taking shortcuts through areas that aren't really intended for a lot of traffic, and that's the dilemma with more and more information. But I certainly think it, not just our information, but what Google puts out and Waze and others, and as that gets even more significant saturation that people use all those tools, and they're still listening to the radio too.
Yeah. So here in the last 45 seconds, Mark, this is something I really wanted to ask you. Is there anything that you guys that we're doing here in the Northwest that is kind of leading the way in regards to traffic, or is there anything that maybe another city in the U.S. or in the world are doing that we may be looking to copy?
That was a little curveball.
Little curveball. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. There you go.
Former baseball player didn't throw on the big curve.
So I mentioned ramp metering already.
Yeah.
We're well known for how our system works and how adaptive it is, and has been for years. But in terms of what other cities are doing, and what we're looking at more, and there's the good and the bad with it, is making use of every inch of space we have on the roadways, and so that gets into using shoulders for part-time travel lanes, which comes with operational overlays and how do you maintain it and everything else. So there's more and more of that work going on.
All right.
Good.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate you.